Hi, I'm Charles Edel, the Australia Chair here at CSIS, and welcome to another edition of Pacific Policy Pulse. I'm thrilled to be here today with Dr. Heather Smith, National President of the Australian Institute of International Affairs, and prior to that, a 30-year career across intelligence, economics, and foreign policy, culminating as the Secretary of not one, but two different departments. Heather, thanks so much for joining us here today.
Thank you, Charlie. It's great to be here. It's great to see you.
Well, you too, but look, you're here not in your AII hat. Tell us a little bit about what brings you here, because it's quite an interesting mission you're on.
Well, last year, the Australian Prime Minister asked myself and my colleague Richard Moore to undertake an independent review of the Australian National Intelligence Community. And these reviews are held usually every 5 or so years. The last one was held in 2017, and it gave rise to quite a number of substantial changes to the Australian intelligence community. The purpose of being here, I think, is twofold. Firstly, to get a sense from the US intelligence community about how do they view the Australian intelligence community, given it's a very deep and enduring relationship. And secondly, to really learn and understand what challenges the community here is facing as well. And as these issues evolve, how can we work together as we navigate this environment?
How well prepared the Australian intelligence agencies are. I know that you've written about this in your public hat as national chair about a changed set of strategic circumstances. So I guess I might ask you, what is top of mind as you travel around Australia about the foremost challenge that Australia faces?
Well, I think from the Australian Institute of International Affairs, just to give context, is one of Australia's oldest institutions, and it started in the 1930s, and it's quite unique because it has branches in all state and territories of Australia and really reaches communities, I think, in ways that other institutions don't quite have that capacity. But it's really focused on how Australia thinks and engages with the world. And I think from the sense of being involved in the AIIA, and our national conference last year was really entitled, How Does Australia Navigate the Perfect Storm? And that goes to the polycrisis that everybody talks about. But I think for Australia, it is the changing strategic complexity that we are now in a fragmented world. And that is a very different world from where Australia has been in the past. Our security and prosperity has really been driven by those 3 pillars of a very strong US alliance, of which is still enduring, and a very stable Indo-Pacific, as well as a rules-based international system, which has really supported Australia's growth and prosperity. So we're in a very different world now. So I think, when we think about what is challenging to Australians and really how do we communicate to Australians that we now need to use all our levers of power that we haven't really had to use before, and we have to think about statecraft in a totally different way as we sort of build resilience and also think about how do we position ourselves for the future. So that is a national conversation, and the AIIA, I think, is important in helping to take that conversation to a wider audience beyond the foreign policy community.
For Australians, but really just to anyone who's interested in some of those pillars that you talked about, stability in the Indo-Pacific, what should they be reading? What are you reading?
Well, I'm halfway through reading the late Henry Kissinger's book on leadership and how individuals over time have really thought about statecraft and the strategies they've applied. The one that I'm really interested in reading, which I did buy over the holiday season but haven't started, is Martin Dowden's book on the economic government of the world. And this is a book that really looks at the post-Depression era and the role of individuals and institutions in giving rise to the economic frameworks that we have come to grow up with, but also benefit from up until quite recently. So I'm hoping, from what I understand, that it ends in a very optimistic note that, if we can get that key issue of greater equality and fairness in populations in countries around the world, then that is, I think, a great possibility that people will have more faith in institutions, but particularly global institutions, in hopefully bringing us back from that fragmented world that we're currently, I think, positioned in.
Thanks so much for joining us here, and safe onward travels.
Thank you, Charlie.